Well, the history of tribal economic development before gaming is really simple. It's what is the federal government giving money out for this year? It was a very top-down, sort of mismatched approach where, you know, tribes' primary revenue sources were sort of federal programs that were part of the treaty obligation. You know, certainly the federal government, you know, in the treaty-making period in the mid-1800s had made all these promises to tribes in exchange for them turning over vast parcels of their land. Basically saying, you know, we hear about, we'll educate and take care of and feed and take care of the health care of your people, you know, as long as the rivers shall run and the grasses shall grow. You know, we hear some of that language. And so the federal, you know, at that time, that was really all that many of the tribes had, were sort of every year trying to appeal to the federal government saying, you know, we need more money to buy food and provide health care and education for our people. But of course, the federal funding was never sufficient. And the federal government knew that, so they would try different programs to stimulate economic development for tribes. But again, it was rarely appropriate, and unfortunately, it was also rarely very nuanced to fit tribes in different regions of our country. So we've got tribes with, you know, 30,000 members on massive reservations in the Midwest, and we've got, you know, small tribes here in California with, you know, 10 acres of hillside, and they all would have the same sort of idea for the year. It's like, well, this year it's going to be orchards, you know, so anybody who wants to put up an orchard, here's some federal funding, you know. The next year it's going to be, you know, manufacturing. And so it was very, it had a mixed success rate, and that's a kind way to talk about it. So that was really where the tribes were stuck. Certainly individual tribes were finding success. Maybe they had a good partner. Maybe they had some natural resources, cattle, maybe some natural tourism. Tribes that live near some of the national parks, or you know, one tribe in New Mexico had a successful ski resort. You know, a lot of it was just kind of hit or miss. What type of natural opportunities did you have? Did you maybe have some partner that came along, just the luck of the draw? But overall, the economic development was really bleak. And there are some common obstacles that tribes have that make that the case. Probably the most easy one to describe is that, of course, one of the primary assets that tribes have is their land base, the land that they have retained through the treaty rights. But they don't actually own that land. The federal government owns the land. So they can't borrow against it. They can't leverage it. Most Americans who are landowners, that's the primary way to wealth in this country, is leveraging your assets and being able to borrow more money and keeping the asset as well. Well, tribes weren't able to do that. So that was a major obstacle, was that they couldn't borrow money to build anything, to attract other money. You know, money brings in more money, and they just could never get access to that flow of capital. And of course, if you don't have credit, you know, if you don't show that you know how to manage the money, and you can bring in more money. So it was kind of a defeating cycle of being underfunded, but then also not having any of the tools or assets that they needed to go and sort of do it themselves.